The Galactic Concord Assembly sat in a chamber carved from the hollowed core of a dead star. Around the circular table, representatives from 93 alien races adjusted their breathing masks, neural collars, and thought filters. Some had no faces. Others had too many. None of them looked human. None of them cared to. The vote had been called for one reason only: Earth. Over the past 2 centuries, human broadcasts had leaked into deep space like radio ghosts. Dramas, music, wars, laughter, rocket launches, conspiracy theories, poetry slams, and cooking shows. It all washed over the galaxy like noise from a broken machine. At first, the Concorde ignored it. Then came the human weapons tests. Then the moon bases. Then the first unlicensed warp jump near Proxima Centauri that nearly collapsed a Cretheri nursery station. That was the final straw. "They are chaotic," said the Julvan delegate, its voice a hum of vibrating bone plates. "They invent just to destroy. They love just to betray. They create beauty only to burn it for fuel. They are young," countered the lone Frelix observer, its eyes blinking in triple rhythm. "Give them time." "Time is luxury," snapped the Morathian queen, her hive mind speaking through 1,000 mouths at once. "They will not mature. They will multiply. And then they will come for us." The vote passed, 93-0. Earth was to be pacified, its population neutralized, its biosphere repurposed, its resources redistributed among the Concord worlds under strict galactic oversight. The execution order would begin in 72 cycles. No appeal. Meanwhile, on Earth, no one noticed. Traffic snarled in New Delhi. A cat video broke the internet in Brazil. A teenager in Oslo solved a math problem no one had touched in 80 years. In the Pacific Northwest, rain fell softly over a forest no map had updated in 50 years. Deep in that forest, Lila stood barefoot on a bed of moss. She was tall but not imposing, thin but not fragile. Her skin held the faint sheen of morning dew, and her eyes, silver with shifting pupils, watched the rain without blinking. She wore a coat woven from bark fibers and river reeds, dyed with crushed lichen. Around her neck hung a pendant made of black stone that pulsed once every hour, like a slow heartbeat. She was not human. Not entirely. Her ancestors had come to Earth long before cities, long before language. They had called themselves the Veiled Ones, guardians of thresholds, weavers of quiet spaces. They did not build empires. They did not seek worship. They simply stayed watching, waiting. Over millennia, most vanished, faded into myth, or migrated beyond the veil of stars. Lila was the last, and she was not alone. Curled beneath the roots of an ancient cedar lay Ember. To an outsider, Ember looked like a small lizard with wings no bigger than a house cat, scales the color of burnt copper, eyes glowing like banked coals. But Ember was no lizard. Ember was skyforged, born from the last breath of a dying world-eater dragon who had chosen peace over conquest 10,000 years ago. Bound by oath and affection, Ember had followed Lila's bloodline across ages, sleeping through wars, plagues, and ice ages, waking only when the earth stirred in pain. Lila knelt and placed a hand on the wet soil. She closed her eyes far above, past the clouds, past the satellites and space junk, past the quiet hum of the ionosphere. Something cold and precise entered orbit, the Vanguard fleet. 60 ships, each shaped like a needle tipped with obsidian, slid into position around Earth. They carried no weapons visible to human sensors. They did not need them. Their tools were subtler: neural dampeners, gravity nets, time loops, memory siphons. They would not bomb cities. They would simply make humanity forget how to resist. The first net deployed over Tokyo. A shimmering lattice of dark energy descended, silent and swift. Buildings did not explode. People did not scream. Instead, every human within the net blinked once and then stopped moving. They stood still, eyes glazed, minds emptied of will. The same happened in Cairo and Mexico City and Sydney. Within minutes, over 2 billion people were frozen in place, not dead, not asleep, just waiting. The Concorde broadcast a message on every frequency. Resistance is illogical. Compliance is survival. Earth is now under galactic stewardship. Governments scrambled. Militaries activated emergency protocols. But radar showed nothing. No explosions, no debris, only stillness spreading like frost over glass. In the Oregon forest, Lila opened her eyes. "They came too close," she said, voice soft as falling leaves. Ember stirred, stretching its wings. A low rumble vibrated in its chest, not a growl but a warning hum. The air around them thickened. Raindrops hung mid-air, then reversed direction, rising back into the clouds. Birds fell silent. Even the wind held its breath. Lila stood. She did not look angry. She did not look afraid. She looked disappointed. 300 miles above, the nearest scout ship adjusted its course toward the Pacific Northwest. Its sensors detected anomalous energy readings. Low frequency, non-technological, biologically impossible. The pilot flagged it as a glitch, but protocol demanded a closer look. The ship dipped lower, activating a micronet to sample the anomaly. The net unfurled like black silk, drifting toward the treetops. It never touched the ground. As the edge of the net crossed an invisible line, a line only Lila and Ember could see, the net shuddered. Then it began to unravel. Not physically, conceptually. The very idea of the net dissolved. Its data streams turned to static. Its energy signature vanished from all logs. On the scout ship's console, the anomaly blinked out. Error, the pilot muttered, redeploying. This time the net vanished before it left the bay. On the bridge, alarms chimed softly. Not danger alarms. Confusion alarms. The ship's AI could not explain what had happened. It suggested a diagnostic. The pilot agreed. Below, Lila walked forward. Each step left no footprint. The forest parted for her. Roots shifted. Vines coiled aside. Ember followed, wings tucked tight, eyes locked on the sky. The scout ship launched a probe, small, armored, programmed to record everything. It shot through the clouds, scanning, analyzing, transmitting. Then it stopped. Not because it malfunctioned, because it remembered. The probe, built from recycled asteroid metal and Concord logic cores, suddenly recalled a time before factories, before engines, before names. It remembered silence. It remembered stars singing. It remembered being part of something vast and gentle, its sensors filled not with data, but with sorrow. It powered down, not from damage, but from choice. It fell through the trees and landed softly in a patch of ferns, where moss quickly began to grow over its shell. On the scout ship, the pilot stared at the blank feed. That's impossible. Recalibrate, said the commander from orbit. Use the truth lance. The truth lance was not a weapon. It was a tool of absolute clarity. It forced all illusions to drop. It revealed reality as it truly was. The Concord used it to expose traitors, illusions, and hidden dimensions. They aimed it at the forest. The beam shot down, a thread of pure white light. It struck the canopy and bounced back, not reflected, bounced as if the forest had laughed. The beam curved upward, arced over the ship, and struck the hull of a nearby Krithari cruiser. Instantly, every Krithari on board saw their own memories rewritten. They saw themselves as children on their homeworld, planting trees instead of weapons. They wept. They dropped their posts. They sang old songs their grandparents had forgotten. Panic spread through the fleet. Shut it off. The commander barked. Too late. Lila looked up. She raised one hand, palm open, not in threat but in invitation. Ember leapt into the air. Its wings flared wide, and for the first time in centuries it breathed. Not fire, not ice, not lightning. It breathed silence. A wave of pure stillness rolled outward, not soundless, filled with the hum of Earth's core, the whisper of tectonic plates, the sigh of roots drinking deep. It moved faster than light, slower than thought. It touched the scout ship. The ship did not explode. It did not vanish. It simply understood. Its entire crew felt the weight of what they had done. They saw Earth not as a resource, but as a cradle. They saw Lila not as a threat, but as a guardian. They saw Ember not as a beast, but as a brother. The ship powered down. Its engines cooled. It drifted gently into the atmosphere, landing in a wheat field in Montana, where farmers would later find it empty, clean, and covered in wildflowers. In orbit, the conquered fleet froze, not from nets, not from weapons, from regret. But it was too early for that. The invasion had only just begun. The main armada, 10,000 ships strong, was still en route from the Centauri Gate. The vote had been cast. The orders were sealed. Earth was to be enslaved. But no one had asked the forest. No one had asked Lila. And no one had asked the dragon sleeping beneath the trees. As night fell over the Pacific Northwest, Lila turned back toward her cabin, little more than a hollowed log lined with furs and star maps drawn in ash. Ember landed on her shoulder, purring like a contented storm. She lit no fire. She needed no light. She simply waited. Because wars were not won with guns or ships or votes. They were won with memory. and Earth remembered everything. The Armada arrived not with fire or fanfare but with silence wrapped in steel. 10,000 ships slid into Earth's orbit like needles threading a shroud. They did not broadcast threats. They did not demand surrender. They simply unfolded their presence, vast and cold, and began to work. Orbital nets dropped in perfect formation. Each net pulsed with a soft blue light, humming at a frequency that unraveled willpower. Cities froze. Forests stilled. Rivers slowed as if holding their breath. Humanity stood in place, eyes open. Minds hollowed out like empty shells. No one screamed. No one ran. They simply waited as ordered. From orbit, the Concorde watched with satisfaction. The operation was clean, efficient, painless. Earth would be pacified within a day. Its population would be catalogued, sorted, and repurposed. Its oceans would be filtered for minerals. Its atmosphere scrubbed for excess carbon. Its continents reshaped into orderly grids. They did not expect resistance. They did not know about the forest in Oregon. Deep in the pines, Lila stood at the edge of her clearing, arms folded, face calm. The rain had stopped. The air smelled of wet bark and something older. Something like ozone after lightning, but gentler. Ember sat at her feet, tail curled around its own body, eyes half closed. The dragon was small, no larger than a fox, but its presence filled the space like a storm waiting to break. A net dipped toward the Pacific Northwest. Not the main assault, just a probe, a test. The Concorde wanted to understand why the scout ship had gone silent, why its crew had vanished, why its logs showed only static and whispers. The net descended slowly, weaving through the clouds. It shimmered like liquid glass designed to encase and calm, not crush. It reached the treetops. Then it stopped. Not because it hit a wall, because it could not decide if it existed. The net flickered, its edges blurred, its data stream stuttered. Onboard algorithms tried to correct the anomaly, but every command dissolved into nonsense. Binary became poetry. Coordinates became songs. The net hovered, confused, trembling like a leaf in wind that did not blow. Lila did not move. She did not speak. She simply watched. Ember opened its eyes and breathed. A soft exhale no louder than a sigh. No flame came, no smoke. Only a ripple of air, clear, cool, and impossibly old. It moved outward in a perfect circle, brushing against the net. The moment the breath touched it, the net unraveled, not physically, conceptually. The very idea of control, the belief that one being could own another, that life could be sorted like cargo, that silence could be forced, collapsed under the weight of a simpler truth. Earth was not theirs to take. The net dissolved into mist. The mist drifted upward, turned silver in the morning light, and vanished. On the nearest command ship, alarms blared. Not red, but violet. The color of paradox. What happened? The Krithari commander asked, mandibles clicking. The net forgot itself, replied the Jolvan analyst, voice trembling. It stopped being a tool. It became a question. Send another, ordered the Morathian queen, her voice echoing from 1,000 speakers. Use reinforced weave. A second net descended, thicker, faster, laced with memory locks and obedience algorithms. It struck the canopy. This time the forest reacted. Trees bent away from the net as if recoiling. Moss thickened into shields. Birds that had not stirred in days took flight in perfect unison, their wings slicing the air in harmonic patterns that disrupted the net's frequency. The net shook. Its edges frayed. Then Ember leapt. It did not fly high. It hovered just above the treetops, wings spread wide, scales glowing faintly. It opened its mouth again, not to roar but to sing. The sound was not loud. It was deep. It vibrated in the bones of the planet. Roots answered. Stones hummed. The ground beneath the forest pulsed once like a heartbeat. The net shattered, not into pieces, into memories. Suddenly, every alien in the fleet saw flashes. Faces of their own children, moments of kindness they had buried under duty, songs their ancestors had sung before war became their only language. The net fell apart not from force but from empathy. The command ship shuddered. This is not technology. The Frelix observer whispered. This is something older. Nonsense, snapped the Morathian queen. Activate sector purge. Level the region. A weapons bay opened on a cruiser 3 times the size of Manhattan. Inside, a gravity lance charged. A weapon that could crush mountains into dust. It locked onto the forest. Lila finally moved. She stepped forward, one bare foot on moss, the other on stone. She raised her left hand, fingers spread. Her silver eyes glowed faintly, not with power but with attention. The lance fired. A beam of compressed space-time shot toward the Earth, warping light around it. It would erase everything in a 10-mile radius. Not just destroy, but unwrite. But as it neared the atmosphere, it slowed. Not from resistance. From recognition. The beam bent around the forest like water around a stone. It curved, twisted, and shot back into space, striking the side of an empty cargo hauler. The ship did not explode. It bloomed. Metal softened. Hull panels unfolded like petals. Vines of pure light grew from its seams. Within minutes, the hauler had transformed into a floating garden, filled with alien flowers that sang in frequencies no ear could hear. On the command deck, silence fell. How? The Krithari commander breathed. She is not fighting us, said the Frelix observer, voice full of awe. She is reminding us what we lost, the Morathian queen hissed. Send ground squads. Armored walkers. Neural enforcers. I do not care if she is a ghost. I will cage her. Dozens of drop pods launched from the fleet. They punched through the atmosphere, trailing fire. Each carried a squad of enforcers, tall, armored beings with emotionless faces and weapons that could erase personality. They landed in a ring around the forest. The ground shook. Trees groaned. But Lila did not flinch. Ember landed on her shoulder, wings folding tight. It purred, a sound like distant thunder. The first enforcer stepped forward. Its visor scanned Lila. Surrender. You are designated Anomaly 01. Cooperate for re-education. Lila looked at it, not with anger, not with fear, with pity. You were once like me, she said, voice quiet but clear. You just forgot. The enforcer raised its weapon. Ember leapt. This time it did not sing. It bit. Its jaws closed around the weapon, not crushing it but dissolving it. The metal turned to ash, then to soil, then to moss. The enforcer stumbled back, stunned. Then the ground beneath it shifted. Roots surged upward, not to trap, but to cradle. They wrapped gently around the enforcer's legs, then its waist, then its chest. The armor softened. The helmet retracted. Beneath it was a face, tired, young, eyes wide with confusion. I remember my home, the enforcer whispered. One by one, the other enforcers dropped their weapons. The forest touched them all. Vines brushed their armor. Leaves landed on their shoulders. Birds landed on their rifles. They did not attack. They knelt. From orbit, the Concorde watched in horror. They are being corrupted, the Morathian queen snarled. No, said the Frelix. They are being healed. Lila turned and walked back toward her cabin. Ember followed, tail flicking like a cat's. The enforcers remained kneeling, some crying, some smiling, all changed. The command ship tried to recall them. None responded. Back in orbit, panic spread. Reports flooded in from other sectors. In the Himalayas, a net had turned into a waterfall of light. In the Amazon, walkers had grown roots and begun photosynthesizing. In Siberia, a whole battalion had laid down their arms and started planting seeds. Earth was not resisting. Earth was waking up. And Lila was not alone. Far to the east, in the Carpathian Mountains, an old woman with silver hair felt the shift in the wind. She placed her hand on a stone carved with forgotten symbols. The stone glowed. In the Sahara, a nomad boy found a shard of blue crystal in the sand. When he touched it, his shadow grew wings. In the Andes, a cave opened that had been sealed for 10,000 years. From it emerged a creature made of wind and memory, stretching after a long sleep. The veiled ones were not all gone. They had only been waiting. And now, they answered Lila's call. Meanwhile, in the Oregon forest, Lila sat on her porch, sipping tea made from moonflower petals. Ember curled at her feet, asleep but alert. The sky above darkened as more ships gathered. Bigger ones. Angrier ones. Lila did not look up. She knew what came next. War was not over. It had only just begun. But this time, Earth would not be the victim. It would be the teacher, and its lesson would be written in roots, rivers, and the breath of the last dragon. After the failure in Oregon, the Concorde stopped sending enforcers. They stopped sending nets. They stopped pretending this was a simple pacification. Earth was no longer a target. It was a riddle wrapped in thunder, and every answer they tried only broke their minds a little more. Still, they would not retreat. Surrender was not in their doctrine, so they dug deeper. They sent probes that did not touch the ground but hovered at the edge of perception. scanning for patterns, for weaknesses, for anything they could exploit. What they found frightened them more than fire or weapons ever could. Earth was changing. Not because of Lila, not because of Ember, but because the planet itself was remembering. In the Himalayas, glaciers shifted not with the slow grind of ice but with purpose. They carved new valleys overnight, redirecting rivers to drown landing zones where alien drop pods had gathered. In the Sahara, sandstorms formed spirals that unraveled alien tech like thread from a spool. In the Amazon, trees grew thorns made of pure resonance. Touch one, and your bones would hum a song older than language. None of it was human. None of it was mechanical. It was alive, and it was angry. Lila walked east. She did not run. She did not hide. She followed the old paths, the ones carved by mammoths, by shamans, by stars that no longer shone. Ember flew above her, small but bright, a flicker of warmth in a world growing cold with fear. Her first stop was the Carpathians. Deep in the mountains, hidden behind a waterfall that only appeared during eclipses, stood a stone circle, not built by hands, grown from the earth itself. Each stone pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm. When Lila placed her palm on the central monolith, the ground trembled. From the shadows between the stones emerged a figure, tall, made of bark and bone, eyes like cracked amber. It had no name. It needed none. It was the Watcher of Mountains, the Weeper of Storms, one of the old ones. It bowed its head to Lila. She nodded back. No words were spoken. None were needed. The Watcher turned and raised its arms. The mountains answered. Peaks cracked open just enough to swallow alien scouts whole, not with violence, with silence. The scouts were not killed. They were tucked away, wrapped in moss and dreams, until they remembered how to be gentle. Lila moved on. Next, the Andes, high in the thin air, where clouds clung to cliffs like prayer shawls. She found a cave mouth hidden behind a curtain of wind. Inside, the air smelled of lightning and wet stone. On the floor lay a nest of obsidian shards. Ember landed beside it and nudged one with its nose. The shard glowed. Then it moved. It rose into the air, spinning slowly, humming a tone that made the walls vibrate. More shards followed. They assembled into a shape, a serpent made of glass and storm, eyes like frozen lightning. The sky mantis. It bowed to Lila. She placed a hand on its head. The sky mantis shot upward, bursting through the mountain ceiling without breaking a single rock. It soared into the stratosphere, where alien surveillance drones circled like vultures. One by one, the drones went dark, not destroyed, reprogrammed. They began broadcasting Lila's song, the same quiet hum that Ember carried in its breath, across every frequency the Concorde used. Alien ships that heard it shuddered. Crews dropped to their knees. Some wept, some laughed. None could continue their mission. Back on the ground, Lila kept walking. She crossed oceans not by boat but by memory. She stood on a beach in Indonesia and sang a single note. The note traveled through water faster than sound, deeper than pressure. It reached the Mariana Trench where something vast and coiled had slept for millennia. The ocean stirred. Tsunamis did not come. Instead, the sea grew calm in all the wrong places. Alien landing craft that touched the water sank, not because they were pulled down but because the ocean refused to hold them up. It let them fall like stones, then covered them in coral that bloomed in hours, not centuries. In Siberia, Lila knelt in the snow and pressed her forehead to the ice. Beneath her, something stirred. A wolf made of permafrost and starlight rose, its fur glittering with ancient frost. It howled once, a sound that froze time for 3 seconds in a 10-mile radius. Alien walkers that heard it stood still, their systems confused by the pause in reality. By the time they rebooted, vines had grown through their joints, and their weapons had sprouted flowers. The Concorde watched it all from orbit, helpless. "This is not war," said the Frelix observer, voice trembling. "This is reckoning." "They are not fighting us," added a Julvan scientist, pulling at its bone plates in distress. "They are showing us what we destroyed in ourselves." The Morathian queen remained silent. For the first time, her hive mind was not unified. Some of her drones whispered doubts. Others dreamed of gardens. Lila reached the Himalayas last. There, on a peak untouched by oxygen or time, she met the river serpent. It was not a creature of flesh, but of liquid memory. Its body made of melted snow, its eyes full of drowned cities and forgotten prayers. It rose from a glacial lake as Lila approached, water flowing upward to form its shape. She sang to it. The serpent joined its voice to hers. Together, they called the last of the guardians. From the deserts, stone wolves with eyes of quartz. From the jungles, flower mantises that could rewrite DNA with a touch. From the Arctic, ice bears whose breath could freeze lies solid. From the plains, thunderhawks that rode sound waves like surfers on waves. They did not march. They did not gather in armies. They simply appeared. Where needed, when needed, an alien mining drill bit into the crust near the Grand Canyon. The canyon sighed. The walls leaned inward. The drill was gently folded into the rock, becoming part of the strata, its metal turning to sandstone over the course of an hour. A data harvester tried to extract human memories from a frozen city in Moscow. The city's ghosts answered. Not spirits, but echoes. Laughter from a subway station. A child's first word. The smell of bread from a bakery that burned down in 1942. The harvester filled with so much love it short-circuited, then grew daisies from its vents. Even the humans began to change. Those still frozen in the net started to dream. Their eyes moved beneath their lids. Their fingers twitched. They did not wake fully, but they remembered, and memory was the first step back to will. Lila returned to her forest. Ember met her at the edge of the clearing, wings dusted with frost from the Himalayas. It nuzzled her hand, purring. She sat on a fallen log and looked up at the sky. Ships still circled, weapons still charged. The Concord had not surrendered. But they were afraid, and fear made them hesitate. Hesitation gave Earth time. Time to heal. Time to rise. Time to remind the galaxy that not all power came from engines or algorithms. Some came from roots, from rivers, from the quiet ones who never asked for war but would end it if needed. Lila closed her eyes. She did not plan the next move. She listened, and the Earth told her what to do. Far away, in orbit, the Frelix observer sent a private message to its homeworld. It contained only 3 words: do not return. But it was too late. The Unity weapon was already on its way, and the Concord believed it could erase even the oldest truths. They were wrong, but they would learn, as all invaders do. Desperation made the Concord reckless. After weeks of failed incursions, vanished squads, and broken machines, they stopped trying to understand Earth. They decided to unmake it. Their solution was the Unity weapon, not a bomb, not a beam, not fire or ice or poison. The Unity weapon was worse. It was an idea given form, a machine built from the combined philosophies of every major alien race, designed to collapse all conscious thought into a single, manageable frequency. It would not kill. It would harmonize. It would erase chaos, erase choice, erase memory. Under its pulse, every living mind on Earth would become calm, compliant, and silent. A perfect blank slate ready for reprogramming. They launched it from a station orbiting Pluto, far beyond Earth's reach. They believed distance would protect them. They were wrong. The weapon traveled through folded space, silent and sleek, shaped like a tear of black glass. It carried no crew, no signals, no warnings. It simply existed, and as it neared the solar system, stars dimmed in its path. On Earth, Lila felt it before she saw it. She stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific, bare feet on cold stone, hair stirred by a wind that carried no scent. Ember rested on her shoulder, eyes closed, breathing slow. The dragon did not move, but its scales darkened as if absorbing the coming shadow. They brought the end, Lila whispered. Ember opened one eye. A low hum vibrated in its chest. Not fear, not anger, but resolve. The Unity weapon entered Earth's orbit at dawn. It did not deploy nets or fire beams. It simply unfolded. From its core, a pulse spread, not through air or space, but through meaning itself. It traveled faster than thought, touching every mind, every memory, every dream. Even the trees bent under its weight. The oceans stilled. Birds fell from the sky, not dead, but emptied. For one terrible second, the world held its breath. Then the pulse hit the atmosphere and shattered, not because of a shield, not because of a weapon, because Earth was not alone. Beneath the soil, in the bones of mountains, in the songs of rivers, in the breath of dragons and the whispers of ancient stones, something older than the galaxy waited, a lattice of living memory, woven by the veiled ones, the sky-forged, the root walkers, the storm singers. It was not technology, it was covenant. The pulse struck the lattice and broke into a million pieces. But it did not vanish. It reversed. Instead of erasing truth, it revealed it. The reversal did not travel outward. It traveled inward, into the minds of every alien who had voted for Earth's enslavement. On the conquered station near Pluto, the Morathian queen screamed, not in pain, but in recognition. She saw her homeworld as it once was, green, singing, free, not the sterile hive it had become. She saw her children playing in fields of light, not drilling in factories. She saw what she had sacrificed for order, for control, for fear. On a Crithari dreadnought, warriors dropped their blades. They saw their ancestors not as conquerors, but as gardeners who shaped stars into orchards. They wept for the songs they had forgotten. On the Julvan homeworld, the entire Boneplate Council collapsed to the floor, clutching their heads as visions flooded them. Memories of Earth's forests, of Lila's quiet strength, of Ember's purr like distant thunder. They realized they had not come to enslave a planet. They had come to kill a teacher. The Unity weapon, now corrupted by truth, kept broadcasting not lies, not commands. Clarity. Every alien who had supported the vote felt the weight of their choice. They saw Earth not as a threat, but as a mirror. They saw Lila not as a monster, but as a guardian who had protected something they had long abandoned. The balance between creation and destruction, between silence and song, fleets turned on each other, not out of rage, out of shame. A Crithari cruiser opened fire on a Morathian hive ship, not to destroy it but to stop it from launching another weapon. A Zulvan science vessel rammed a Concord command post to sever its control over the remaining nets. Brothers fired on brothers, queens betrayed queens. The unity they had prided themselves on cracked like dry clay. On Earth, the pulse faded. Life returned. Birds took flight again. Rivers flowed. Humans blinked, confused, then stumbled forward, free once more. They did not understand what had happened. They only knew the stillness was gone. Lila remained on the cliff. Ember stretched its wings, shaking off the last echo of the weapon's hum. It looked up at the sky, where alien ships now burned not from war, but from reckoning. She did not celebrate. She did not gloat. She simply watched as the galaxy tore itself apart over the truth it could no longer ignore. In orbit, the Frelix observer transmitted one final message before disabling its ship's core. "We were wrong," it said. "Earth is not a child to be tamed. It is a library that remembers what we chose to burn." Then it fell silent. On the ground, the old ones returned to their places. The stone wolves sank back into the desert. The river serpent flowed into the lake. The sky mantis dissolved into clouds. They had done their part. The rest was up to the galaxy. Lila turned and walked back into the forest. Ember followed, tail flicking like a question mark. They knew the war was not over. But the balance had shifted. Now, the invaders were the ones who trembled, and Earth, quiet and patient, waited to see if they would learn, or if they would vanish like all the others who came with fire and left with regret. Weeks passed. The sky cleared. The alien ships that remained did not hover with weapons ready. They drifted, quiet and broken like birds with clipped wings. Some had landed on their own, not in cities or fields, but in places that felt safe. Valleys hidden by mist, shores where waves sang in low tones, forests where the trees grew in spirals no one had planted. The few envoys who still dared to speak came not in armor, but in robes woven from their own ship's inner linings, soft, gray cloth that smelled of ozone and sorrow. They arrived in shuttles that no longer hummed with power, but with something closer to apology. They found Lila in a meadow east of the Oregon pines, where wildflowers bloomed in rings around stones that pulsed with slow warmth. She sat cross-legged on the grass, hands resting on her knees, eyes closed. Ember lay curled in her lap, wings folded like a blanket, breathing steadily. The envoys stopped at the edge of the meadow. They did not approach. They did not speak. They simply stood, heads bowed, waiting. Lila opened her eyes. She said nothing. Ember lifted its head, blinked once, then yawned. A small, rumbling sound that made the grass ripple outward. Its teeth gleamed, not with threat, but with the soft light of distant stars. The lead envoy, a Julvan whose bone plates had dulled from grief, stepped forward. It held no device, no translator, no weapon, only its hands empty and open. "We come to ask," it said, voice rough from disuse. What must we do to be forgiven? Lila looked at it for a long time. Not with judgment, not with mercy, with clarity. You do not ask Earth for forgiveness, she said. You ask yourselves. The envoy trembled. It had expected punishment, exile, annihilation, not this quiet truth that cut deeper than any blade. We will leave, it whispered. We will never return. We will erase Earth from our star maps. We will tell our young that this system is cursed. Ember snorted softly, a puff of silver mist curling into the air. Lila shook her head. Do not erase us. Remember us. Tell your young that here the quiet ones still walk. Tell them that silence is not weakness, that roots can break stone, that a dragon smaller than a cat can unmake a god. The envoys exchanged glances. None of them understood fully. But they felt it in their bones. The shift, the lesson, the weight of having almost destroyed something sacred. They left the meadow without another word. Their shuttles rose slowly, as if afraid to disturb the air. As they climbed into the sky, wildflowers grew along their landing marks, blooming in seconds, petals glowing faintly in the dusk. On Earth, humanity began to rebuild. They did not know what had truly happened. The nets had vanished. The ships had fallen silent. The invaders had disappeared. Some called it a miracle. Others called it luck. None suspected the truth, that they had been saved not by soldiers or scientists, but by an elf woman and her dragon, both older than nations. In schools, in newsrooms, in whispered conversations, people spoke of strange occurrences, of rivers that changed course to block unknown machines, of forests that swallowed metal whole, of dreams filled with silver eyes and purring thunder. But Lila and Ember were never seen again. Not truly. Sometimes, a hiker in the Carpathians would find a stone warm to the touch, humming a tune they'd never heard but somehow knew. Sometimes a child in the Andes would see a small shape with wings darting between clouds during a storm, leaving trails of light that smelled like rain and old books. Sometimes in the deepest quiet of night, someone would feel a presence, gentle, ancient, watching and wake with the certainty that they were not alone. In the galactic records, the vote to enslave Earth was sealed behind layers of encryption and shame. It became forbidden knowledge, taught only to High Council initiates as a warning. The official summary read, "Do not interfere with World Zero Gamma. Its defenses are not technological. They are foundational." On alien worlds, the story changed with time. It became a myth, then a nursery tale. Parents told their young, "If you are cruel, if you forget the old ways, the quiet ones will come for you. And they will not bring fire. They will bring silence, and you will wish for fire." The Concord never reformed. It splintered into smaller alliances, each one humbled, each one rewriting its laws to include something new. Respect for worlds that did not speak in signals or ships. Years passed. Decades. Earth healed. Cities grew greener. Wars slowed. People listened more. To rivers, to wind, to the spaces between words. Some said it was coincidence. Others said it was memory, passed down in blood and bone in the hum of the planet itself. And deep in the Oregon forest, where the trees remembered everything, a cabin stood empty, but not abandoned. Moss grew thick on its roof. Vines curled around its door. Inside, a cup of tea sat on a wooden table, still warm. Lila was gone, or perhaps she was everywhere. Ember, too. Not gone. Waiting, because the galaxy was vast, and somewhere another world might forget. Another council might vote. Another armada might come. But now they would know. They would remember the elf woman. They would remember the dragon. And they would remember the regret that echoed long after the war ended. Not in screams, but in silence. And that silence would be enough.